Started from the bottom, kept on climbing, perfect timing, looking down from the top. I don't see no opposition from my position. I'm focused. It's the must, I complete the mission. I won't stop, I can't stop. The grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.
Hey everybody, welcome to this special edition of the Identity Jedi Show podcast. It's our first sponsored edition of the season. Shout out to our sponsor, Strata.io, our friends over at Strata. We're partnered up with them to sponsor this episode where we're going to have a deep dive conversation with their chief architect. But I wanted to give you just a breakdown of how we do sponsorships here at the Identity Jedi Show. So when we partner with these organizations, we like to talk about what their product is. And I always want to make sure that, again, it's for the industry, it's for you guys, and we talk about what's going on with their product and how it's different and going in the industry. So it's a really dope conversation that we're having. And then, of course, to give you guys something special. So check the show notes for the links to hear more about the information from Strata. And then for the newsletter coming out next week, we've got some special things for you guys as well. So be sure to stay tuned to that. And of course, you guys, before we get into it, make sure that you are tuned into everything going around the Identity Jedi universe. So link into the newsletter at identityjedi.com. Make sure to like, rate, subscribe on whatever platform you're checking us out on. If you're on Spotify, make sure to like, rate, and subscribe. You can also leave comments for us there. Listen, last year we were ranked in the top 10 for video content on Spotify. We want to make sure that we come right back in, and at least we're somewhere in the rankings, right? Whether or not we make top 10 or not, that depends on you, so make sure you like over there. And on YouTube, same thing as well. So we appreciate it. It all goes a long way. Make sure the team keeps hustling and doing the things that we do. We all appreciate it. So once again, shout out to Strata.io, our friends over there, for sponsoring this podcast. I've known those guys for a while now. It's really been fun to watch them grow, and it's always a good time hanging out with those guys. So it was really fun to partner with them on this sponsored episode. So without further ado, let's get you over to the sponsored interview. Let's learn all about that. And you guys get to meet Grandville. He's so awesome. This interview was amazing. Let's get you straight to it. All right, everybody, welcome back. Listen, we have got a super special guest because this is our first sponsored podcast and sponsored interview of this season. So we got to kick it off and do it right. Shout out to Strata for sponsoring this episode. And we've got this interview coming up with Grandville. And listen, we are going to dive into a whole bunch of things. But before we do that, I'm going to give him a chance to kind of talk about a little bit about his background. Him and I have had a chance to cross paths before in this industry, because for those of you who work in this industry, you guys all know how small and tight knit the identity community is. It's one of the things that I love about it. And I tell people as you get into this industry, it's not just a community of people who kind of work together. Like, it truly is a tight knit community. And it's one of the things that I think is truly, it separates it from any other community out there. I really, as I've gotten older and I've seen different communities, it's unlike anything else. And so it's really super cool. And so without further ado, I'm going to let him kind of introduce himself, tell a little about his backstory. We're going to get into that, but then also let him tell you about what Strata's got going on around AI. And we're going to talk about how, we're going to do some things with that when it comes to identity. So Grandville, welcome to the pod, man.
Thank you so much for having me, David. I'm super excited to be here.
Awesome to have you, man. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm the chief architect at Strata Identity. Been here for about 3 years. Before Strata, I was at F5 in the office of the CTO, where I ran R&D. And I also served as the chair over JavaScript security task group. So I got to oversee the security of the JavaScript language, which was quite fun. Before that, I have a big background in startups. So I was the founding CTO of a company called Seamless AI, which automated the sales prospecting process. Also served as a founding engineer for numerous other companies in the healthcare and the telephony space. So that's a little bit about my professional side. Now, me personally, I love like extreme things and building robots. So,
okay.
Yeah. So I love skydiving. I love snowboarding, and I like mountain biking, but I'm not good at any of the above. I'm good enough at skydiving, apparently, because I'm still here. Right.
Right.
But yeah, I just love those sort of things. It helps, bring a little bit of other, different things throughout the day when your head's down writing code or shipping software. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, I moved to Colorado in 2018. Before that, I lived in Ohio most of my life, and yeah, I am a Ohio kid, big Ohio State Buckeyes fan, and yeah, I yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So I got to ask. So do you remember, since you're into building robots, you remember that show? Was it with Robot Wars? Where they used to
I
build
remember. Oh man, what I'm trying to remember the name of it. It's BattleBots, right?
BattleBot. There it is.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
BattleBot.
BattleBots, yes. So apparently they still do BattleBots, or they brought it back. And there's a
Okay.
BattleBots place in Las Vegas, apparently, but I haven't
What?
been there yet. Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Every time we're there for a conference, I'm like, oh, I should really go to that BattleBots place, but I haven't been yet. So it's on my
Okay.
to-do list.
All right. All right. Yeah. I remember like seeing that and I was like, dude, that is so I was never one for robotics, right? It was always interesting to me, but like, you know, hardware was just not my thing, right? I just,
Mm.
getting down to like to the hardware part of it and connecting things, like it was interesting, but I was always a software guy, right?
That's fair.
I was always like, but I'll
I
make
have it.
the I'll make the software and the operating system to control it, right? And somebody else put together the hardware things, right? So that was just kind of like always my thing, man. But yeah, BattleBots was super cool. Some of the things I would see people put together, I was like, that's pretty freaking cool.
It's pretty crazy. Can I show you something real fast?
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna point my camera this way. It's been a long running process, but you can sort of see it here. But been building a table tennis playing robot for a few years now,
Wow.
and so been building it. There's so much work left to do on it, but I'm excited for it, but it's right now it can barely hit any balls back that I throw at it, but I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Ohio kid. Awesome. So that means you're obviously Ohio State fan. National championship last season, one of the best runs ever. Even though we didn't beat that school up north, it's okay because I will take the championship over that anytime. And people always wonder, how the heck am I an Ohio State fan, even though that I grew up in Los Angeles, California. So quick explanation for all those that don't know the story already. So my cousin went to Ohio State University. So it's all her fault because she went there at the time that I started playing football. So she got indoctrinated, and so she would send me all this Ohio State gear. So therefore, I was an Ohio State fan, and I've been one ever since. So loved it. Loved the fact that we ended up getting a national championship, but I still want to beat that school up north because I can't stand the fact that they beat us 4 years in a row now, and we better beat their ass this year. Okay, moving on. So
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, man.
I love that. So I guess you're
Huge.
ready for Saturday.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. Like, no idea how I'm. Like, I'm one of these. So I'm a huge football fan. Obviously, I played growing up. I'm not I'm a football nerd, right? Like, I love the game, and so it's one of those things that I call myself like I'm not like an outward fan. Like, I don't have jerseys, I don't have the flags, all that stuff, whatever. But I just love the game, and so it's one of those things that the more I want to see a game, the less I want to be around like people. Like I because I want to sit and be able to enjoy the game and like break it down and look at things. So it's like there's certain groups of people I'll go like and watch a game. Like, so it's like, so if there's a Super Bowl happening that I really don't care, like I'll go to a Super Bowl party.
Hmm.
So like this game on Saturday, like I'm watching it at my house. Like I might go with my cousins, like because I want to sit down and like I'm gonna be in it, man. I'm gonna be watching coverages and what they're running and all this stuff or whatever. Like, so I don't want to be around people who are asking me like, what's third down? Like get you? No, this is not the game for that, right? Like I'm in it, right? So I'm that type of guy. Like I'm really intense when I'm watching football. So yeah, I'm gonna be locked in this Saturday. I'm a little concerned. I've been hearing all these stuff about like, oh my God, this is supposed to be a sponsored podcast. Anyway, listen, I've been hearing all this stuff about Julian saying I'm just like, I want to see it, right? Arch Manning, there's a lot to see. This is a huge game, big game. So very interested to see how this goes. I think it's going to tell us a lot about both teams. But yeah, I will be I'll be all over this one. Like, I'm that guy that, like, I will go and find all 22 footage after the game on YouTube and break things down. That's me. I just, that's how much I love football. Like, if I wasn't doing this, I would probably be a football coach somewhere.
That is really cool. I'm gonna text you after the game then, and we'll compare notes.
Do it. And happy to do it, man. Happy to do it. So,
oh, love that.
Yeah. All right. So you've got super impressive background, dude. Like, and especially around like security and identity on the architect side. And I love, like, you know, your time, you know, office of the CTO, obviously, you know, a little bit biased because that's, you know, kind of how I spend a lot of my time. And I think one of the things that's very interesting when you have that background, right? And I say this, I've said this a lot, and I tell the people who've come to me and asked me about like either mentorship or you know, how did you get to where you are, things like that. And I tell people, I was like, I believe that technical folks make the best product managers. Okay, before people start booing me and all this stuff, whatever, hear me out. Here's why. And I'm not saying that you can't be a good product manager not being technical, but I'm saying like either technical folks or folks who have been out in the trenches. And the reason why is because I feel like to be a good product manager, you truly have to understand the problem that the customer is going to, and not only build something, you know, to help the customer solve the problem, but also to help the customer solve the problem in the way that they're going to use it. Because how a customer needs to solve a problem and how they use a tool to solve a problem is two different things, as you very well know, right? Like, yeah. And that's the thing, like when you're like in the trenches and you've seen people use something, and like, you know, years as a consultant, years implementing stuff or whatever, and I would go back to product and I was like, well, we built it like this. I'm like, well, that's great, but this is how the customer's using it, right? Like, so I don't care like what you did and how you documented it. They're not using it that way, right? And so when you have that, and when you get a chance to, like, if you work for an office of the CTO, like the beautiful thing about it, or get into that type of level, right? Not necessarily has to be in there. But my point is you get a chance to see it at a high level, two things, right? You get to see a wide range of different customer problems, but you also get a chance to see it from the ground up, like where the work is actually being done, but also from an executive view, right? Which is really important because you get to see how leadership views certain problems and how the problem at the ground bubbles its way up, and how it's kind of like that game of telephone that we played as a kid, how down here it's seen as one problem. By the time it gets up to the executive view, it's seen completely different, or there's a different perspective of how it goes there. And so when you have all of that context and then you go, okay, now I want to go and create a product, or I have an idea, you kind of have all this in your head and you can start to craft, like, I know I need to solve for this builder, but I got to create this thing for this executive because they're the ones that are going to sign off on it. And I want this builder to have a great experience, and I want this executive to sign off on it so I can give this builder this great experience, right? And so all these things kind of come together. And so I think like that path kind of gives you some of that. So walk us through like the story behind, right, this, you know, as you're at Strata and you guys are looking at AI and this problem that's coming, walk behind the story of how you guys decided to say like, hey, there's something here that we want to do. Like, how does that story come together and you guys start seeing a problem and saying, yeah, we there's something here that we want to solve?
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. And our founder and CEO definitely tells the story a million times better than I could. So shout out, Eric. But I'm going to do my best. I think one of the interesting things for Strata is that our customers are typically your Fortune 5,000 and below, right? So a lot of Fortune 500, Fortune 50, and also on like the defense side of the house. And what's super interesting here is that with these customers is that typically they're not all cloud-based, right? They have a lot of like, you know, on-premises systems, a lot of their own data centers, and they might have a hybrid approach as well. And but oftentimes they deploy a lot of things on premises for a variety of factors, whether it's compliance, whether it's security, just a lot of numerous things. And so as we're talking to them, we've been talking to a lot of like more forward thinking enterprises as of late.
Mhm.
And some of them are doing some really, really cool things on the agentic side of the house. And we're talking about like examples where they're going to 50 to 80x the number of agents that they have as like personnel in the business. And we're not talking like a few people like startups here. We're talking thousands upon thousands of employees. And so as we're talking to him about this, it became very apparent is that, there's no real like auditability or traceability of these systems yet, right? Oftentimes this has been like ad hoc, or these individual teams are thinking through like, hey, how do we do this? What sort of off the shelf software can we use at this time? And they're finding it difficult, right? It's just a different scale. It's a different set of problems. And so when you think about auditability and traceability, it's interesting because like beforehand, if we nerd out for a second, we're like, hey, we want to make an API call, right? I can go log into a system, I can get a token minted for me to go make that API call, right? And it can be attributed to me, right? Or attributed to you, David. And it's pretty simple. But what happens if you have someone else make that call for you? So if David, you're like, hey, Grandville, can you go query the system for me? And now it's a little bit interesting, right? Because I'm the one making the call, but I'm only
Right.
doing it on behalf of you, right? So it's a new set of problems that
Yeah.
isn't actually new. It's not new in the space. In fact, like many people, including you, have talked about this before, right? And so you have this like delegation problem there. And so as we're talking to these customers, it turns out that, since most of our customers are in these very sensitive industries where these like audit logs and these like proof of like delegation chains is super important to them. And so let me pause there. Like, what has your experience been there before I move on?
Experience as far as like in the customers that have like sensitive systems, or like just
Yeah.
in the whole like, yeah. All right. Yeah. Those customers, yeah. It's all about being able to prove at any given time who has access to what. And I know that sounds so simple, right? But like, I'll back up when I first came out. So my career started with all the three little organizations, right? And so all I know of security when I first started my career was that everything is need to know. And so by definition, security access models were you were attributed to a specific amount of access, and like the purest of attribute controlled access, right? So you had a certain amount of access based on attributes, and whatever attributes you had, that's what access you had. So to the point where I could have access to something, you're my manager, but I could have more clearance than you. You still had to approve it, but you could only approve the things that you had clearance to see. So I could submit for something, right? And you would see the things that you could be approved to see. You would approve those things. The approval would go through to the next, like we at the time we called them isms, which the security manager. They would see the things that they could see, and the approval request would go through. Like that's so it's all comes down to like, need to know and who can see what, and then why. It was such a big thing. Like why do you need this access? And it was all about non-repudiation. I needed to know without a shadow of a doubt that it was David that had access to this, even down to like when we set up like the first time you got your account, right? And you got your certificate like to sign on, like it had to go to David, and he had to get a certificate, and so it had to be delivered a certain way. Like, so all these things is very much had to be tracked and audited down to the person and down to the attribute of who that person is and what they access to, when, why, and how, all the time. So that's how I started. And so you start from there, and then you come out the private sector. People are like, yeah, I'm just like, wait, what? This thing happened. Like, what do you mean this thing happened? Like, well, it was this, and here's the logs. I'm like, I'm seeing all this stuff. Like, who has access to this account? I don't know. Like, we set it up 3 years ago, and like, who logged into it? Oh, David has access to it. Tom has access. It just blew my mind, dude. When I came out, and I was like, oh my god, like, just gave me so much anxiety. I was like, yeah, you guys have no clue what security is. So, yeah, very familiar with that. Like, so I can only imagine right now looking at that, like you're entering in the delegation problem, agentic flows on behalf. I would even add to it. It was funny. I was talking to a buddy of mine about this at RSA. You even have this problem of, let's say I'm accessing different information, and I've got some information that's classified confidential. I've got other information that's unclassified. So unclassified information, confidential information. So now I've got an agent that can access all of it, right? So I take unclassified information, confidential information, I combine it together, and then I create a new report. What is it? Is it classified or is it confidential? Maybe the combination of both that information together, plus the prompt that you just asked and the new data came out, maybe it's now secret. I don't know, right? Like, it's all these things that kind of come together. Like, we're going to start having these new dynamic ways of not only just access, but now data with that. And so understanding these models in real time and how we're authorizing this is going to be very interesting when it comes to AI, because we have these delegation models. It's got to be like, well, David's asking for this, but David has access to this, but this, AI agent has access to everything, because I got to go look at it, and then I got to determine, right, what do I give back to David? And then what I just created in this new session, what is this thing that I just created? This new context of data, right, now exists in this session, I'll call it, right? Is it saved back, or does it just exist in this time and it goes away? So sorry, I kind of took it down a different tangent there, but it was just, while we were there, I'm like, it's kind of there, right? Because it becomes the byproduct of this now interaction.
It's so fascinating. Like, man, you hit on some of my favorite words, non-repudiation. I think that's absolutely critical now. Just because you have a process, you have to, I honestly, like, this can be argued, but in like our space, in the security space and the identity space, I think that unless it can be held up in court, I don't think it was designed right. And, it's kind of extreme,
Yeah.
but, I like that, right? And I love that concept. Like, it's a really good example, right? Like, so you take that unclassified information, you take that top secret information, and if you combine that, but the output data doesn't have any top secret information, but maybe it has enough context in there that it's no longer unclassified, what happens? It's a really interesting problem. It's a really interesting problem. Wow. Yeah. And so, like, one of the interesting examples that you gave was, so, you made an information request and then you got manager approval, right? These different chains of approvals aren't new either, right? Just having, going up the chain to get access to another system, like, those workflows have existed in enterprises for a long time. Now, some enterprises have better systems than others. But one of the interesting things that happens in this new space that is kind of new is when you have this like AI agent and you give it agency, like, you run into an interesting scenario, right? Like, so you have policy. So you might have like fine grained policy. Hey, agent, you're able to do A, B, and C. But maybe you're able to do A, B, and C, but up to some amount. So maybe an exact example could be like, maybe an agent is responsible for transferring funds based on some other trigger that happened in the enterprise. But maybe you're only allowed to transfer like up to $10,000, right? And if you, David, you're like, hey, I need you, agent, to go transfer money. And it's like, okay, it was for $500. I can go transfer this to the right department. But if it's like, hey, I need you to go transfer $1 million over to this other department, then what happens, right? You are making this request to this agent. So maybe you have the right roles and permissions to be able to ask the agent to do that. But you're asking the agent to do this, so it's going to do this on your behalf, right? And so how now can you say, okay, the agent was able to do it to this amount. Now, how do we bring you back into the loop? Right. So how do we verify that you, David, are the one to ask this? Right. Because the whole idea here with these systems is that they have agency. So
Right.
they can, like, ideally, they're making these requests because you asked it to, but it doesn't always mean that you asked it to, right? They might have been like, hey, we want to help David out. And we know, like, hey, he's about to go into this customer meeting over here. We need to get funding transferred. So let's go ahead and move this money. Right. And so in that model, it's like, how do we bring you back into it and verify out of band of those types of requests to get your approval? And then in some other examples is maybe we ask you, but maybe we also have to verify that you are human, right? There are some examples here where it's like in certain industries, you had to have multi-factors here to be able to prove that it was David at that point in time that did that approval. And so we like started noticing this more human in the loop approval versus
Yeah.
just these fine-grained auth policies.
Yeah, it's really interesting, the agency aspect, right, of all of these, right? And I think for me, it's very, you quickly go down the rabbit hole of, the three laws of robotics, right? When you start to think about, the agencies and the guardrails, you give some of these things, it's like, all right, so in general, you're going to give it, okay, hey, I want you to think of a customer support bot, right? So you say, okay, I'm going to make it agentic. Your job is to solve the customer's problems for customer support. And you can, refund, process refunds, issue support tickets, and I don't know, answer phone calls, right? So those are three things you can do. But of all else, make sure that you're providing a good customer experience and solve the customer's problem. So in all those things, right, you're guiding, you're telling the agent your guiding line is to solve the customer's problem. So what happens when those things conflict and you go, okay, so in that case of like, you have a transaction limit of it's going to process a refund, but the customer had a really expensive item and the item was $15,000. It's like, okay, well, I can only, process a refund of 5,000, but I'm supposed to, make the customers happy. The customer's unhappy, but I can't, process a refund of $15,000. Like, but I gave it agency. Like, what is it going to do? Because we are, and this isn't, these aren't theoretical things, right? We've seen experiments and there's research out there where, the AI will take agency and do things based on the guardrails it's given, and it'll take steps outside, access different systems, create start to create code to do different things, right, to meet the original objective that it was given. So it's interesting. We are in very interesting times, right? We kind of are in those sci-fi times, which I think for builders and coders is both fascinating and terrifying. I'll speak for myself because it's terrifying because I think for the most part we're not very good at disciplining ourselves and keeping ourselves focused on things because we just tend to build things without asking questions because we want to see what happens, right? But it's exciting because we're able to, we're problem solvers, man. We're able to solve all these problems that, we couldn't do before. And, I, for one, like I've always been, I want to build a Jarvis, right? I want to build that, that helper that allows me to think and move at that pace. I saw Iron Man. That was the most beautiful thing that I saw, right? An engineer who could move and create at the pace of his mind, right? I think it, and I've got, an AI that's moving with me. Jarvis, do this. I got to do this. I'm building, like, right? I was like, because most people, when you talk to other engineers, when you talk to fast thinkers, right? I think most of them all suffer with the same thing. Like they can't move at the pace that their mind does. And so when you have something that's like, that can do that, it's like, I see this, I see that, right? I think that's I want to create this, move it this way. I need this function. No, it needs to go do this. Like it starts to, it truly becomes limitless, the type of things that we can do and create. And I think that's what's so exciting about this time. But also from a security perspective, I do agree with you that like we do have to start looking at things like it's going to have to hold up in court, meaning we do have to get to the point where it's got to be ironclad. We've got to know every single step what something was taken, because of the fact that the scale of transactions and now the delegation model of identities is so vast that we can't look over that and just go, oh, okay, well, it was this service or this token. Like, dude, like, no way, right?
Mhm.
We've got to have an ironclad audit trail to know that it was David's request and intent to do this, then filled by this AI agent, would invoke this service with this credential, which called this API, which did this. Like, we have to have that. Otherwise, man, yeah.
Chaos. Chaos. It's yeah, goodness, like obviously you know the space so well and you see that, and it's so interesting, right? Like, we were just talking about a very basic example of like one or two hop calls, right? Meaning like, you ask an agent to do something, that agent is calling another system. But as you know, like, that other system, the final system, could be calling other downstream systems as well. And what's stopping, making a request against your agent and it like working with a group of agents that have their own backend systems? And now like this like audit trail is insane now,
Yeah.
because it used to be like, even in like microservice land, right? Like, even though like when you have microservices and you're calling that, there's a finite amount of different systems that you can call at a given time. So, a
Yeah.
team that is building microservices, they might know, hey, this service needs to call this service, and this service needs to call that service, and it needs access to XYZ. Like, that's pretty easy to reason about with a large enough team. But in this land, it's like, that agent may choose to call an agent it's never called before because it just learned about it and it realized like, hey, that agent might be able to help me out better than this last one. Right. Or maybe something else happened and it's like, oh, this is a tough problem. Let me spin up my own sub agents here that are like hyper specialized in certain areas and allow them to do the work. Now you have this like sort of like theoretical parent-child aspect here where it spins up these sub processes to do work on its behalf, but you have to audit the fact that that agent spun up those processes, right? And
Yep.
and then attribute it back to the user that made the request or gave it the intent, like, hey, go run these reports autonomously for me. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know, it's a scale like anything else we've never seen it before.
Right. We haven't. And you know what the interesting thing though is, I was having this conversation. I can't remember who I was having it with, but I was walking through it and I was like, listen, for the first time, when you think about just think about authentication and authorization, right? What we've been trying to solve is, when you think about this flow, is like we want to identify the entity. Like, so who are you? Right? That's authentication. We want to know without a shadow of doubt who somebody is. And then we want to say, okay, we want to know who you are. We want to know what you're accessing. So we want to know the application. And then we want to know what you want to do within the application so we can give you the right access. We want to track what you do within the application. And then we want to make sure that you don't do anything nefarious in the application. We want to log you out. So that's the trail that we want. And so across that flow, right, what we've always been able to know is who you are. We've been able to know and assign and give you kind of like a profile and give you access. We've been able to track what you've done. But the one thing we haven't been able to do is get intent.
Mm-hmm.
We've never been able to know what is it that you're trying to accomplish. We know that you're logging in, you're authenticating, you're going to Salesforce. So we just assigned you a role or something, right? At some point, you had to go request it and get something. So we assigned you that role, but we never knew what you were trying to do. But now, if you think about it, right? So if you look into this new world of, which I think is coming, like I think, like a Claude or OpenAI, whatever it is going to be, Copilot Studio, call it whatever you want, becomes like your new enterprise OS. but where you're prompting something and having a conversation, right? And that becomes the new OS. That becomes your new entry. For the first time, we have intent. Not only do you know who I am, you know what I'm trying to do. You know the reason I'm going to this application. Hey, I want to know all the latest deals over 200,000 in this region and the last meetings we had. That's what I send to my prompt. So it goes out and gets all the information for me. I know it's David, what he's asking for, what type of information he needs. I was like, so for the first time, we have all the variables solved on the left side of the equation before we actually go authenticate and authorize somebody. Like, it's a new world now. And I'm just like, so think about that. It's like, so now, like, let's rethink about that flow and what we can do both pre and post, right? Like, we have so much information now before then. It's like, okay. And now if we think about the things of like zero standard privilege and all these things, it's like, we know so much information beforehand. And we can say, all right, so I know who you are and what you're asking for and what you want to do. Hell, I don't have to give you, I can truly give zero standard privilege and go, when I finally get to the application and go, oh, this is the application you want. And now I can go tell Salesforce, this is David. He wants these data entitlements and these things. And I can provision it skim at that time and just give you those things and then pull back out. Like, right? Like, go let you, and first of all, you're not even logging in. I can just go get that information, get it back, boom, and then get that information back out. Done. Like, it is, that to me is like, starts to really change how we look at things, right? That entire chain of how we do authorization and authentication. And granted, like, again, I'm always I tend to go like all the way, like to the extreme, and then okay, but what's the, life works in the middle somewhere, right? Like, the most advanced companies will do that. Like how much companies lean into AI and all that stuff and change management, and most people will still want to log in applications. But I mean, I could just see it, right? I mean, I could see organizations where it's like, why do I log in applications anymore? Or it's the whatever it is, whether it's a Google search bar. If it's Google, if it's OpenAI, if it's Cloud, whoever wins this little race where it's like, that's where they start. And it's just conversational based interactions and prompts. And they're all connected through MCP servers. And I just get to the data. Easy, done. Right.
That's a really good call out. I love that. Right. Like, you're right. It is the first time in the industry when we actually have all of the pieces on the left side well before we even solved the right side as an industry. And that's really cool. Like, I love the intent side of it, right? If we can get to a world, like, being a security nerd as myself, like, obviously I'm biased here. I love security. If we can get to a point where it's like zero standing privileges at a time, and we take into account, like, what is your intent of doing A, B, and C? That's a really cool world to live in, right? As you think about it from, in fact, I would even argue, like, I think that's a big thing wrong with how we manage identity today. And it's because we didn't have that, right? It's a lot of work to even, it's like, oh, hey, if you want to access this application, write your intent before doing this, and then it'll have like approval. Like, that's a lot of work, and it's cumbersome. But if we can get to a world where intent is part of all access on demand, I think some really interesting things open up. And I love that. I love that approach.
Yeah. There you go. You heard it first, folks. We coined it right here. Intent-based access. There it is. No longer role-based, no longer attribute, intent-based access. Okay, there you go. Whatever. Now they can debate about that for the next decade or whatever. I'll be retired by then. I don't care. So I want to shift the conversation. Let's dig into the product that you guys built and released, right? So as you guys were, talking to your clients and you're seeing, as they're starting to use this and kind of roll this out, seeing the scale with AI and agentic as they're starting to roll these things out, and you're realizing that, hey, this is a lot they're going to deal with. What were the first kind of things you were seeing that as you guys are looking at your product going, here's the areas that we can go solve? And just kind of walk me through like the early kind of things that you saw, and then that led to the initial release of the product that you guys have now that you guys have released?
Yeah, yeah. It's I would say like what's super interesting about us is because of the target market for us, like the enterprise, the ones that typically have a lot of their own infrastructure or a hybrid approach, and on the defense space, like our niche is definitely the enterprise and defense space that have security and compliance as like their number one priorities, right? And so as we look at that customer base, we saw everything we've discussed to this point. It's like, hey, we have to have this audit trail. How do we get approval? How do we have these fine grain permissions there? How do we handle permissions for a system that was just born real time off of this request, right? It's not like a workload that a team built. It's an agent that was spun up for one unique task. And so given those constraints, what comes with that is a bunch of on-premises IDPs and cloud IDPs, a bunch of on-premises data sources that hold a bunch of claims and system data from it as well. And so when we look at this, we're like, our piece of this pie is how do we protect these enterprises that have all of these complex like infrastructure topologies from the ground up, and be able to enable them in their full agentic journey. So what I mean by this is, one, as a lot of our customers are starting out, they are either just in the midst of like spinning up a AI team or teams, or have had a team that's been around for less than 6 months, right? So brand new compared to the rest of their teams.
Yeah.
And so, but they have all of these systems that already exist, right? They have all these APIs, they have all of these like internal applications and endpoints that have all this data that would be super beneficial if we can raise that data to AIs, but do it in a secure and auditable way. And so as we're looking at this, we're like, well, how can we fit in here and bring that level of security and compliance to them? One is like from our identity orchestration standpoint, obviously we can be that facade for their IDPs. So what's interesting when it comes to agentic side is that if we are the facade for whether it's a cloud IDP or one of the hundreds of internal IDPs that these enterprises have, we can actually be the source of tokens. And so what's interesting there is as these agentic systems are coming up, they're getting a token minted from Strata Identity, whether the final identity lives in a cloud IDP or an on-premise one. And then when it comes to these backend systems, it's like, okay, you have all these internal APIs and whatnot that need to be protected. Well, we can either be we try to incentivize them to be allow us to be that internal facade for those identity interactions. Because then what happens here is like, we can then do that delegation chain, right? So it's like, oh, David, you're requesting A, B, and C from your agent. Well, your agent also has an identity that was minted through us, but you're going to this backend system. So at that time, we're able to then be able to say, oh, cool, agent David 2.0, your agent. And but David asked David 2.0 to make this request. And at that time, we can be like, oh, based on this policy, let's go do this token exchange and like create a token that has these very fine grained permissions that live just for the length of that call, right? We're able to do that now because we can actually fit on both sides of the equation. And when you think about like those APIs, well, allowing agents to talk to APIs isn't anything new, but what is new there is in the last, 10 months now, there's a brand new protocol around called the Model Context Protocol, so MCP. And, that's gone through a whole slew of like different enhancements over the last 10 months. But at right now, you have OAuth 2.1 protecting as like the authorization aspect to protect these MCP servers. And so we're like, what if we allowed our identity orchestration to be able to not only be that identity facade or be those proxies for those upstream applications? What if we allowed it to also do that translation between all of these backend APIs and backend services, regardless of their protocol, but bring them into the fold by doing this MCP to that proprietary protocol format, and bring all of the authentication and authorization with fine-grained policy into it, and that human in the loop aspect, right? So our first step into the space is, how do we allow customers today to bring their systems to their agents while bringing the level of security and compliance that they need?
Okay. So you guys, if I were to make sure I summarize it the right way, because the way I'm taking that in is, you guys looked at it and said, okay, listen, if I got a company, you guys are jumping in heads first, you're going to build out agentic, workflows with your agents. Awesome. But this isn't new. We've all seen this rodeo. Let's not have you go down and redo a bunch of stuff that you guys already done before. And what you're going to need is a layer to handle all the mint token, all the identity stuff you need. We've already got orchestration for identity, so we'll just give you that layer already for your agents, so you can connect into all the stuff that you need for identities, but you already have it. And you're going to need to connect that to your identities anyway. You just don't know it yet. So it's already there. And on the back end, right, there's this new protocol coming for, it's going to need to go and connect and do these things. So we'll be there as well. So that way, when your agent on one end is talking and says, okay, I need to go on behalf of David and get this information, where they'll handle that. When the agent needs to go and talk to the back end application and get information, we're also there on the same way to make sure the agent is going to connect it in for that's the part where I'm a little fuzzy on, like on the MCP side. Like, are you guys fronting the agent's connection like through you to MCP?
So twofold, actually. This is really quite interesting. So we have this system called the orchestrator, which can do lots of things, right? It can be an OIDC provider, SAML provider, an LDAP provider, but now it can be an MCP provider, and soon an agent-to-agent provider. And what's cool here is that on the backside of that, it can act in a few different modes. All right. So one mode is what we call MCP bridge. And the idea here is that it takes an MCP from the agent, but then it does the translation to all of the backend protocols. So whether it's REST APIs, so something else. And so we enable you to bring all of those backend services that you already have, that already have access to that data, and now be able to expose it to agents without rewriting any of those systems. But in addition to that, now we handle the authentication for you, all the fine-grained authorization, and enable you to have a human in the loop as part of your policies, right? And that's MCP bridge. But then it's like some of these other organizations we work with that are like already further along. They're like, hey, we are spinning up these MCP servers. We're spinning up our agents, and they're going to speak agent to agent. And so for the MCP servers, we act as an MCP proxy, so that your team hyper focuses on the business logic, just again, the value that they provide to their customers.
Right.
But we will handle all the authentication, all the authorization, all the auditing, observability, and the human in the loop aspects for you. And so they don't need to be an identity expert or a security expert. We just have to be able to take this and deploy it next to your MCP server to make sure that it's properly secured and observed.
Gotcha. Okay. I want to make a statement. Let me know if this is right, because if it is, this is fucking awesome. So you can, all right, scenario. I am a Fortune whatever-ish thousandth company. I've got XYZ app, freaking on-prem, old as crap. Nobody knows how to freaking use it anymore. The one girl that used to update it retired. Nobody likes it, right? And so with this, I can basically, with MCP Bridge, right? I can just say, oh, this thing now magically speaks MCP because I'm going to put MCP Bridge in front of it, right? My agent can talk to an MCP Bridge. I can do whatever I need to behind MCP bridge. I don't care if it's a Python script. I don't care if it's whatever. I make magic happen over here, and then pipe it over to the MCP bridge. And now all of a sudden, I just MCP enabled XYZ application.
Yep, exactly.
Boom, magic. Love it. Love it.
It's really fun. I love seeing your face right now, and it's a very similar face that all of our customers and prospects have when we talk about this. They're like, "Wait, we don't need to go build all this stuff," because a lot of them are like, "We don't understand the identity protocols, right? Like we're learning MCP now, but it's anyone that's been in the space have realized like there's been 3 releases just in the last 7 months, like." It's evolving fast, and enterprises don't move that fast.
Nope.
And so like we, get to offload all of that complexity for our customers and just allow them to be able to build things a lot faster than they used to and still meet their security and compliance requirements. And I don't know, I love seeing your face smile with that. And it's a very similar experience.
I mean, because this is like, it's architectures like this, right? This is the speed and agility that was promised of the SaaS world, right? Dare I say, this architecture was the prince that was promised to us 30 years ago in the inventions of SaaS. And I've always been a huge component of that. It's like the ability to have, developers, business, like get hyper focused on what you do best, which is you go build your business functionality, and then, infrastructure will be infrastructure, and you separate the two. Let me not call it infrastructure. Let me back up. Basically, what you're doing is you're creating logical levels of separation, so that way everybody can work in parallel, right? So, hey, business function, go do your thing, right? Focus on the business functions, like whatever you're doing, all your business logic, whatever. Your identity protocols, your authorization, stuff like MCP, all this stuff, whatever. Hey, you guys, we're going to focus on that. We're going to get that for you. And as these releases come out, we're handling that. As you guys make updates in business, we're handling that. And guess what? We can work in parallel. And now business, you can move with agility. You can move with speed because you can do the things that you do, right? And you don't have to worry about how fast the outside is moving. You can move at the speed that you need to move. Because you're right. Like enterprises don't move that fast. And that's the thing about AI that's so interesting, right? And why I say this is the one thing that we haven't seen before, where history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes, because we've never seen something this freaking fast, right? Like it changes in months, man. Like quarter to quarter, it is so different, right? Like and like in a year, AI products are making leaps and bounds. And I was like, yo, enterprise is moving in glacier speed, man. Like, so like they can't possibly take on that much change that quickly, right? Yet, right? And if it continues to take the speed, what we're going to see is, some businesses are going to have to learn how to move faster. I think the younger ones will, right? And I think over time we'll see the differentiators of the organizations that realize that, like, hey, I got to make this a competitive advantage. The more that I adjust and I can take on some of this change and move, the better, right? But for the most part, like they need to be able to adapt to change. So yeah, man, that is absolutely awesome to be able to do that and offer that to your clients. So I see it. It is very Eric Golden.
It is
very
Eric Golden. And what's interesting is, these enterprise customers, they want to move fast, right?
Yeah.
Most of them are like, they want to move faster. And it's just due to their industries and their like just internal requirements. It's really hard for them to. And so by able to like just, come in and help be able to handle the hard parts for them so that they can go have fun. I don't know. I'm hoping that more and more vendors are able to do that so that these larger enterprises can like stay caught up in this new age.
Yeah.
Times are changing.
Dude, they absolutely are, man. Times really are changing. And I think we're now getting to the point where we have we have the technology to get rid of a lot of the excuses that have been there, which is we can make this easier and easier for the customers. And I say, when I'm saying we, I'm saying the vendors in this industry, right? I'm saying the practitioners, the builders, right? We can truly make this easier for the customers to adopt and take on to this and start to solve their problems faster, right? I've always been very, very critical of enterprise software because even when I came into this when I was younger, I never understood why enterprise software looked the way it looked and acted the way it acted. I was like, why did it have to be different? And we just accepted it. It's enterprise software. It's got to be like, and I'm like, you
It
mean
doesn't
so?
need to be enterprise software.
Right. You know what I mean? I was like, so like when I first came in, I was like, so I just thought, oh, okay. So it's a different process. Like enterprise software is created completely different than regular software. And then I get into it and I was like, but it's not like, so why? Like, why is it shittier? Like, why is it like it doesn't have to be? And so, like, we're getting to this point where, we truly can, iterate and evolve and make, you know, we can make the software, better, faster, scalable, for customers, and then working with them to adopt it and truly get that those wow moments, right? And allow them to go, yeah, you can move at the pace that your business wants to move, and we don't have to give them these, but they don't have to live in a world where it's always like, well, I would do this, but it's going to cost me millions and take all this stuff, whatever. I hope, right, that those years are behind us. I think the next decade of software in the enterprise is no longer 15-month implementations and all this stuff or whatever. I think we're going to start seeing, over the next couple of years, the next 3-5 years, I think that stuff's going to start going away. And we're going to start seeing where it's like, hey, like we bring this in and, we are, months, right? 2-3 months and we roll this out and we're starting to do this. And I'm hoping over the next decade that starts to become the norm. And now we start answering questions of like, what does your software do for my business? And how does this truly become a business enabler? Because we're seeing this, with AI and how it can transform business. And it's funny, and we'll wrap with this. And I want to get your thoughts on this. I started seeing this thing floating around LinkedIn where, and I've yet to validate this, and I promise I'll go research and look at it. That there's supposedly an MIT research report or whatever that enterprise AI projects are failing, and 95% of them are failing, and here's why they're failing because it's lack of enterprise buy-in, and they're not they don't have a clear function of what they're doing, and they're not set up the right way, and it just literally reads like identity projects from 20 years ago. I'm just like, we've seen this before, right? And it just goes back to the same, like, again, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Like, it's the same thing. And it's like, we're going to figure this out. Like, like AI is not going to go away, right? And if they truly are failing, fine, but they're not going to fail for long because these things are like, it just works too well, right? There's too many things that it solves well that it is going to do. And it's like, we'll figure it out. We'll learn how to like actually point it at right things and get it going. We'll just learn how to do it the right way. So my question to you is looking at this and seeing what you guys have developed now, what's your view on AI and identity looking forward? How do you see it changing the way we approach, how we do identity? And if so, what does identity look like in 10 years for you?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good set of questions and a really interesting report. What I find interesting about that report is, like you said, history rhymes here. People start using something just to show it work. Like, making a chatbot may not provide the right value to your organization. And so from that standpoint, my opinion is if you're going to start a project, try to understand where the greatest value is going to be derived from and try and really see your POC from start to finish, right? Don't build something small and just show a small piece of it because the value comes from something end to end, right? If you over optimize for anything for a very small portion of the process, it isn't going to make a dent in anything, right? So really take a look at the process from the start to finish and make sure you're really driving value across that. Once you do, and you find those right places where AI can fit in, Like you're going to be a hero to your organization.
Yeah.
So your question around like identity for the future, honestly, I think we hit on it in this call. I really think the future is going to have a lot more of these agentic identities than human identities. I think we're going to get to a world where we have that non-standing privileges. And I think it's going to be intent-based creation of those privileges just in time. And what's really crazy and really like mind-boggling for me is what is the approval process going to look like for those? Because if it's so fast, obviously humans can't be in the loop for all of that. So you have these agents that are making those decisions that also have to have the right type of controls over it. And it feels kind of meta to think about. And I also think, when we think about like what these models that these agents are based on, I think it's going to be interesting that I believe we're going to get to a future where we're going to have agents within an enterprise that aren't going to be based off the same models internally. And I don't mean like different, like a small model, a medium model, or a large model by the same vendor. I mean like different vendors, because you have to have checks and balances, right? And one interesting study I heard, and I don't know if you heard this, have you heard about the agent that was trained to really love owls? Have you heard
No.
this? Okay. So there's an example out there where an agent was trained to really love owls. And then that agent was told, I want you to write an essay about anything but owls. Owls should not be in it at all. Right. And so imagine this agent wrote an essay about cars. Right. What's interesting is if you then fed that essay that has nothing about owls in it, nothing about birds in it whatsoever, back into the same base model that the agent that was trained to love owls, and then you ask it about what its favorite animal is, it's very likely to say owls. And what's interesting about that is there's some interesting bias in these agents today, right? And there's something else in there that, lots of studies and different types of research is going into them. And so as we think about like mission critical systems, we have to have checks and balances. We can't just trust one central system to say yes and to say no, like at least as far as these agents are concerned. So you have to have a deterministic way that you can prove, hey, they should be able to do this, and here's my proof, and have other agents to check them. And so I think the future of identity is going to like build in all of these checks and balances. And I think agents are going to lead the pack, in my opinion.
Very interesting. No, who would have thought that humans would build, would build a system that has bias in it? Nobody would have thought about that. Anyway, man, dude, we could talk for hours, bro. I appreciate you taking the time, and this has been amazing, man. You were welcome to come back on the pod anytime, bro. Seriously, I love the innovation. I love the thought and detail that you guys are putting in to what you guys are doing over there. I keep going, man. We need it in the industry. Keep pushing and keep working to help customers not only see the problems they're solving today, but like that light bulb moment, right? Keep pushing for that light bulb moment, because I think that truly is what makes this industry fun, right? And that's what brings I think the joy into this for all of us. So appreciate you taking the time, Grandville. This is awesome, man.
Thank you so much. It's truly a pleasure to be on. And man, I've been a fan of yours for so long. So super excited for the opportunity to be on here with you.
All good, man. All right, everybody, that's it. Another great interview in the books. If you guys want to find out more, you guys can check out the website at strata.io. And of course, theidentitygedi.com for all the latest on the podcast newsletter, all that good stuff. We'll see you guys next time. Man, what an awesome interview with Grandville. And just an update, yes, Ohio State did beat Texas. And it was an awesome Saturday for me. Arch Manning didn't look too great as I'm recording this now. He had a better showing against San Jose State, but I mean, come on, it was San Jose State, but that's football. If you ever want to nerd out with me about football, feel free to hit me up, identityjedi@gmail.com. I will nerd out with you all day long about football. So listen, this was awesome. Listen, if you ever want to know about sponsoring the podcast, if you're out there and you want to work with us and do some things, hit us up, identityjedi@gmail.com. Listen, we're all about making sure this industry continues to go forward. Shout out to Strata.io one more time for, being a sponsor. Grandville was just awesome, man. I love the conversation. I really love what they're doing with the orchestration, with the MCP bridge. It's really exciting to see how this is going to shape where we're going forward with AI orchestration, the authentication authorization of it. Again, I get excited when I start to think about how we are going to handle agents and authorization and this kind of intent-based access, right? It's really interesting to think about how this happened and how fast it's moving, right? I don't think we are. Honestly, I don't think we're ready for it, right? I think we're kind of, we're kind of chasing our tails a little bit when it comes to this. So there's a lot of innovation, a lot of things happening. So it's really cool to see the innovation that's going on. So dig in, folks. Buckle up, get ready for it. Continue to be curious, continue to innovate. And of course, as always, be good to each other, be kind to each other, love each other. We'll see you guys on the next show. I'm out.
The grind is all I know. I'm focused, I can't stop. The hustle's all I know. I'm hungry, ambitious. My heart is on go. You in the presence of greatness. That's all you need to know.